dedicated movement towards a certain way of being.
A certain agenda,
And
would
a
you
certain
say?
agenda, certain, yeah.
Yeah. So there's like an agenda for mankind, if you like, right?
Well,
An agenda for mankind, right? And okay, right. Hello and welcome to another Serious About Success podcast with myself, Jay, and alongside me, I've got Hazel. So how are you, Hazel? You okay?
I'm very well, thanks, Jay.
Okay,
Yeah,
good. Right, we're continuing our conversations, Jay and Hazel conversation, or Hazel and conversations with Jay and Hazel, yeah? We
That's the
continue
one.
with that, yeah? Okay,
Yes.
cool. Now, we were speaking a little bit before we started about some of the things of what you wanted to discuss today. I always, tend to start and come in with a real sort of, hook type question. But I thought, let you start today. So what's on your mind then, Hazel? Give me an idea in terms of some of the things that you've been thinking about.
Yeah, so I have been giving some thought to our chat today, and I was ruminating around and thought what would be a great subject of conversation to start with was people have heard that we've been in business for a while.
Mm-hmm.
They've heard a little bit about our backgrounds and what we do, etc. But one thing they don't know much about is what the tough times have been like, perhaps, and what it's meant to actually be able to deal with that side of things. So the first question I've got for you today, Jay, is think about, one or a couple of tough times that you've had in your life, particularly in business, I would say. Particularly
if we're
in
talking
business.
about life
No,
here.
I think let's go with business.
Okay, all right, cool.
And you think about a particularly tough time in your business and what it was that got you through, picked you back up the other side, and made you feel like, no, right, this is what I need to do in order to move it forward. Because it's very easy to hear the glamour stories and look, what I've been able to achieve or do, or success and all this sort of thing. But we all know that success is not a straight line.
No. It appears that way, and obviously, people are attracted to, the glitz and the glamour and, the expectation that it's going to be so easy. But no, we've all had our challenges, and one particular time that springs to mind right now. This is probably the biggest challenge that I've had so far.
Okay.
In business, and this was several years ago. So maybe, I don't know, maybe what year are we in now? 2024. Maybe 6 years ago, 7 years ago, something like that. I was doing a redevelopment, property redevelopment, okay? So I was just turning a house into a HMO, so a homes of multiple occupation, for those of you that don't know what HMO means. And basically it turned into a bit of a money pit, and I didn't realise, when I first started, I've got several flats and apartments, it's like, everything's easy, like, just keep it simple, like, there's nothing to it, put a bit of decoration in there, that's about it. But on this one particular occasion, we had to do the development, so we had to put in about maybe 5 or 6 different bathrooms, and the whole thing was going back to literally the bare brick and just developing the whole thing. And it started off okay, because I put in, a couple of £100,000 into this by buying it as well, and then obviously, doing the development and stuff, So everything was all going all good, right? But then it just seemed like it was hemorrhaging cash. Like, there was problems after problem after problem, which was all very, very costly problems, okay? At first it's like, yeah, it's going to be all right, yeah. How much? An extra 10 grand? Yeah, all right, cool. How much now? Another 18 grand? Yeah. How much now? What, another 20 G's now? You want another 20 grand? All right. So we got to a point, where we'd kind of sunk in quite a lot of money into this thing. And it was like, well, do you know what? I'm running out of cash here. I'm running out of money. Like, I'm going to endless supply. Like, I haven't got that, no Saudi prince, like, do you know what I mean? So I haven't got
No bottomless pit of
well, this is it. Or
gold.
just money, So I started running out of money, right? And then the plan was this. It's like, look, I tell you what, all we got to do is have enough money to finish the project, okay? So what that basically means is we just need to raise some money, okay? So, you know, I asked a good friend of mine, he's like, no, you can get bridging loans, you can do all this type of stuff. I'm like, all right, fine. I'll get a bridging loan because the plan is this. Get the bridging loan, finish off the project. As soon as we've finished, we can then go and remortgage at the higher amount because now the property is finished. So we can now go and remortgage, you know, pull our money out of the property and then pay off the bridging loan, yeah? So that's the plan, right? That's the plan. It's like, yeah, right, cool. So went ahead and got this bridge loan, yeah, so it was all good. And then when we then finished the project, so we finished the development, which was all good. So I think I'd borrowed maybe about 8 grand, something like that. But they wanted that money back within 6 months. Yeah, so I'm like,
that's how it works.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, no problem, should be all good. Now, when it came now to remortgage, you know, we got a decline.
Oh.
You know, so it was a big, you know, when it came to, and I'm like, what's going on? Now, my partner at the time, you know, she had missed one payment, some credit card payment for about £300 or something silly like that. And she had missed that maybe, I don't know, a year ago. I don't know what it was, but she had missed one payment. And that one payment meant that they declined our application. So as a result of that, I was like, what? But they want their money back within like the next 6 months, you know. And at this time, I think it worked out about £18,000 that they wanted like a month, you know, being paid back over that period of time. And I was like,
Expletive.
well, look, to say the least. So it was very difficult. It was very difficult because I was out of money and I don't do bad credit. No. I don't do
You can't afford to. When you're in a property game, you
That's correct.
can't afford to.
That's correct. So I'm like, well, what am I going to do? So what I then did, I mean, the good thing about this basically meant it was like we sat there, me and my partner at the time, and we said, all right, what are we going to do? And when we said, do you know what? We're just going to make more money. And it's like, look, we was doing, you know, well as a business as it was, but it's like, all right, I've now got to make an extra, you know, on top of an extra 20 odd grand a month on top of, you know, the money of what I already make. So it's like, well, what other choices have we got? Mm-hmm. All right, cool, let's make more money. And that's exactly what it was that we did. Mm-hmm. So we just went out there, made more money, and what it did is that it allowed me to break a ceiling of my income, you know, of the amount of money that I was generating every single month, because it's like, well, this now shows me that I can do it because we did it. Yeah. And it showed me that I could do it. So from where it showed me that I could do it, it's like, well, why am I not doing this every month anyway? So although it was a challenge, a real big challenge, there was there's something positive that came out of it. Yeah. And, you know, ever since then, I've kind of never looked back because it kind of really forced me to really now, you know, make some moves and really, you know, push myself. So ever since then, I've been able to push myself more and more and more, and always know that, you know what, I could always make more money. Yeah. You know, so that was it. That was the hardest time. So at the time, though, when it was like, you know, decline, that's when I was going, yeah, you know, explicit words to say the least. You know, so yeah, so that was me. You know, that was my biggest challenge. What about you then?
Yeah, and it's interesting you say that, because when you're forced into a make or break scenario, it does galvanise you. It you know, you're literally forced into a situation where you're either going to fall apart and everything's going to come tumbling down around you, and you can't see a way out, and you could go one direction, or you could say, right, okay, what has to happen in order to turn this around? And you find it's in that, I don't know about you, Jay, but I find that in times of crises, that's when you really find out who you are.
Yeah, I agree. Well, that's where you grow the most.
It's where you grow the most, and it's
in the happy times is happy times, right? So it's like, well, what growth is required here, because it's happy times. Yeah. But when things are a challenge, and that's one of the biggest things that I think that where mistakes are made with people's expectations.
Yeah.
You know, obviously I've coached thousands of people over years. You've done the same sort of thing. And, you know, when there's challenges, it's like, well, no, this is not going to work. And that's like the barrier, that's like the wall that then gets created. And then, you know, we can't get across that wall. But it's like, well, no, that challenge is there to cross that challenge so that you can now evolve yourself as a human being, as an entrepreneur, you know, in whatever aspect that you're trying to sort of succeed in, right?
Yeah, 100%. 100%. I was going to say it's like a brick wall that goes up and you have to see, okay, do I go over it, around it, under it, break through it? What do I do? And you have to, if you really want to make something work, then you will find a way. There is always a way. And I think that's probably one of the biggest messages out there. For me, again, it was another property. It was a property scenario. And for myself, it was my husband and I, we had fairly recently got into property. It was a few years into our property journey, and I decided when we first really got cracking that my first goal was to own £1 million worth of property. That was my big hairy goal. I wanted to do it by the time I was 30, and 9 days before I turned 30 we owned £1 million, or just over the £1 million worth of property. And that's not, you know, owning it outright. Obviously we had mortgages, but it was over the £1 million portfolio value. And whilst that was absolutely incredible and it was amazing and, you know, what have you, the property that had put us over that £1 million mark was a very plush 3-bedroom apartment right next to the Thames Barrier in London, in a development called Tradewinds at the time. And that whole area was being redeveloped. It was up and coming. There was a Docklands Light Railway being built literally right next door to the development. We knew it was a good one, okay? And somehow we had managed to actually, you know, make the deal work. What we didn't expect was what happened next, which was the fact that to let it was very hard. We couldn't find tenants very easily because it was a 3-bedroom flat, and because there wasn't much around the area, it was like, you know, who's going to rent this property from us? So we ended up getting sharers, and so we had, you know, 2 or 3 people sharing at one time. Sometimes we had months with vacancies. So even though it was relatively close to Canary Wharf, it was, you know, anyway.
Because you would assume that would just go like that, right? You'd assume so.
You'd assume so. You'd assume so. But because the development hadn't happened yet, it was a good year to 18 months off happening, and still was kind of, you know, a little bit kind of maybe ropey in some people's eyes to actually live there. It meant that we had some months where we had to bankroll it. And whilst we did have other properties, we had other flats and a couple of houses at that point, which we had income coming in from, that one was taking away so much that our cash flow was negated massively. And again, we were kind of forced into this scenario of, right, okay, what do we do? And at the same time, I'd given up work because we were going to be working for somebody in terms of buying property into an investment fund. And long story short, I won't go into that right now, but that didn't come off. So I'd given up work. Dennis was at a point where he was still studying his, you know, business studies and what have you, and it was just absolutely crazy time. So we didn't have the money to bankroll it. So I remember sitting at the top of Friant Country Park, because we lived in northwest London, and it was this lovely country park. We sat at the top of this hill and we just gave ourselves a jolly good talking to.
Okay.
I said, what are we doing? Why are we doing this? Because that property was going to bring us under if we hadn't.
But you wanted it because you wanted the £1 million property portfolio.
Exactly.
You wanted that, okay.
And we could see the potential. So we had the vision. We could see that it was going to be worth at least like double what it was worth now in 5 years' time, let's say. And it was quite a, you know, hefty value. So we could see the potential, but we didn't have a means to bankroll it, and we didn't quite have your faith at that time that we could make more money to bankroll it. We were still fairly early days in our investing career, as it were. So what we did, we made the very hard decision to sell it at a loss.
All right.
So we made about a 40k hit on it, in terms of the capital and the cash flow that we lost. And we started again, and we said, what is most important to us? And we decided that the most important thing was not the £1 million portfolio or the £5 million portfolio, it was the cash flow. It was the cash flow that we wanted to generate from our portfolio. That was the most important thing. So we reset the needle to, right, it's about the cash flow then. It's about what those properties can bring in terms of a monthly revenue, because that's what's going to free us up to be able to live how we want to live. Yes, the capital gains are very nice and we could see the potential, and we'd gone too quickly. It was too soon into a deal like that. We'd listened to somebody else talking about, you know, the potential of it, etc., etc. We'd kind of been sucked into that without realising what was most important to us at the time. And that's when we really started listening to ourselves. And funnily enough, that's when we made the decision to go into HMOs.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay. Because of the cash flow.
Of the cash flow.
Yeah.
And so we sold that property. Then we started, you know, realigning and finding properties which were suitable for HMO purposes, and that's when the cash flow started coming in. So it was a galvanising of what was most important, of what the strategy was that we really did want and need to follow in terms of what was going to get us there.
That was like quite a catalyst moment in terms of how you're now going to move forward.
Yeah.
You know, so, you know, at one point it's like, right, okay, let's just, you know, just build. We want the, you know, the seven figures, all the rest of it. But then that kind of made you think to yourself and, you know, look at the strategy a little bit more wisely.
Yes. 100%.
And then move forward with the right strategy for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's really important that we all have to go through these challenges.
It seems that way.
Of course, this is it, because I mean, you could have easily at that point like, hang on, this don't work. You know, this is why I hear, you know, I'm like, hang on, Jay, that don't work. Jay, that don't work. You know, I tried that. Jay, don't work. So you could have easily turned around and said, well, hang on a minute, this property game is just too, you know, it's too risky.
Yeah.
You know, like, you know, this don't work. However, obviously, you've now taken that on board and just kind of rejigged your strategy on a whole, and now obviously cash flow is the most important thing for you.
Absolutely. I think if you can't bankroll something, and it's a bit like what the scenario that you faced as well. It was about the cash flow, and that's why, you know, you'll hear it said again and again and again, cash is king.
Yeah, that's
okay,
correct.
whether that's digital cash or physical cash these days, you know,
that's right.
it's still the same thing. It actually oils the wheels of your progress, of your business. And if you take your eye off the ball of, like, the credit rating, like you're saying, you know, that we've always, you know, made absolutely certain that our credit rating is squeaky clean so that we can get the credit. So, you know, you've faced that yourself, and always looked really closely and carefully at any future deals that we've done since that point. That's when we really developed our spreadsheets and really got our head in the game. And, you know, it took us to the next level. It took us to the next level of professionalism, really, and what we were doing to make sure we could analyse something to the nth degree before going into it, knowing, because property is literally, if not it might even be the only business in the world that I know of that you can predict with relative accuracy what the cash flow is going to be. Any other business that you start is a little bit of a pluck a figure out of the air, isn't it? Whether it's a solicitor's, a restaurant, I don't know, estate agency, it could be any, you know, it's always going to be something you've got to build up and learn to market and learn to sell and what have you, coaching, you know, etc., etc. There's always a process that you have to follow that you don't know for sure what it's going to be like until you throw yourself into it. So with property, it's one of the main things that you can do if you get good at it, that you can predict what that cash flow is going to be with relative accuracy, even before you spend one penny on it. So of course there are unforeseens, like you say, of course there are, but you have to, you know, account for those things.
So what stopped you then from feeling like a failure? You know, like, hang on a minute, well, you know, this whole property thing, it didn't go the way that you wanted it to go. You know, we could have, you know, thought about all of this stuff beforehand, but we didn't, and all the rest of it. So what stopped you from feeling like a failure?
That's a really good question.
Well, somebody said this to me today. On the way down here. I was in the car on the way down here, and I stopped and I done my little thing. You know, I do something at 1 o'clock in the, you know, like that, my little accountability thing. And somebody said to me today that no matter what they're doing, you know, they can't help but feel like a failure.
Okay.
So, you know, they might make a little mistake, and they feel like a failure as a result.
Interesting.
So what stopped you from feeling like a failure?
I don't even think I considered failure as an option. If I remember back, I think we knew that we were good at property. We knew that we enjoyed it, and we knew that we had made other deals work, and we saw this as a bridge too far that we'd gone at the time. It was not a matter of feeling like a failure. I mean, yes, we realised we were going to lose a lot of money, but in all reality, the money that we had gained previously wasn't. It's so surreal when you work with property or any business, especially when it's more of an investment business. You make money without having to put much money of your own in, or you can make money on top of money that you borrow, and so it didn't really feel like we were losing it because we'd made so much more elsewhere. So we saw it as a glitch in the system. We gave ourselves a bit of a berating at the time, but it was very short lived, and I think we just thought, well, okay, it's a bump in the road, but we've learned from that, and it's a really big learning, and we will not make that sort of mistake again. We'll try not to.
Yeah.
And so it just meant that we just had to recalibrate. So I just think, like I said, I just don't think we saw it as a failure. Therefore, we didn't feel like a failure.
Yeah, I get it. So what mistake do you think people make then when they're starting businesses and they make, one error and they think that they're a failure as a result? What is that all about, do you think?
I have a strong feeling that people perhaps feel that way as a throwback to their younger days, perhaps their childhood, perhaps they've been to school and they've been told that they're wrong, or if you make a mistake at school, I know we're going back to the school thing here, but when you make a mistake, it can hurt when you get like that F on your paper, or some teacher says that you're wrong or it's not the right answer, and you get made to feel it's that feeling of belittlement, I suppose, and kind of curling up and not seeing a mistake as an opportunity to grow, but it's been perhaps got lodged as a feeling of failure, because you've made a mistake, you've done something wrong, and therefore that has lodged as a feeling of failure. And so the idea of trying something else or trying something new or shifting direction, it may be so painful to even consider, because what if I get it wrong, and then having that feeling again. I think it, whether it stems from school or from parental influences or any other childhood influences, I think I personally think that probably stems back quite far as a guess.
I agree because when you're young, you're not always told that failing is a good thing, right? Of course, mistakes, obviously it's different, in my household, with my daughter, it's like, look, you have to, you have to fail.
Yeah.
You have to make mistakes, and, don't let that mistake be something that's going to now hold you back. Yeah. So obviously she's learning from, my experience. Yeah. However, typically when you grow up, you don't necessarily hear that failure is a good thing, it is bad. And I remember, obviously, I didn't do that very well in my GCSEs, Okay. When I was at school, I think I probably got like C. I got one C. I got D's, E's, and F's. I remember, I think French, I got an F. I think science, I got an F. And because them days, I was more just focused on just being a cool dude and just, having fun, right? So, I didn't do very well. And I remember seeing the disappointment.
Okay.
The disappointment in... I remember seeing it in my family's face, obviously like my dad, say, for example, and he would then try and make excuses for me.
Okay.
He would try and make it, well, the thing is, you didn't do very well, and and then try to make it that excuse for me, instead of just seeing it for what it is, and that was, what? It just wasn't me, I want to learn in a different way, like, for example, at the time, but then how that felt within me, seeing the disappointment. Because I remember going in, do you remember going in on the day? The day, and even though like me in my head, I'm like, well, whatever. but you're still like, well, yeah, I wonder how well I did. And like, you're with your friends. Do you remember? Did you have the same day?
I had a very different experience, but you carry on. I'll tell you my experience.
Well, I remember going in on the day and you collecting your results, and like, you know, all my friends was around, and you know, everyone's opening up their thing. And even though I'm thinking, well, I think I'm going to want to do other things in my life. It's not the be one end all. You're still looking over, like, hang on a minute. What did you do? What did you get? What did you get?
The comparison.
This is it, the comparison. Yeah. And then when I saw one C, D's, E's, and F's, I thought, shit. I thought, oh man,
you thought, that's it. I'm not going to go anywhere.
I just thought, look, I just felt so. I just thought, yeah, that is not very smart, you know. However, it's almost like sometimes we allow these failures or these results of what we should be getting to define us, to define who we are. So at that point in time, you know, I'm now defined by what I got in, you know, in geography, you know, or in history, you know. I'm defining who I am, and that's what the rest of society pretty much does, is define who you are based on your failures. However, I suppose that's why the entrepreneurship journey is such a unique journey, and that's why most people don't do it.
Yes.
Because, you know, failure is not a bad thing. You know, failure is a good thing, and to really define that you are that failure. So when you went through your experience, when I went through my experience, and there's been others, of course, there's been loads of others, do you know what I mean, you know? But it doesn't define who I am. I define who I am based on who I believe that I am and what I'm going to achieve in this world, and, you know, and just my life, rather than allowing the failures and the problems to define who I am, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, we're not taught to fail.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
We're not actually taught that failure equals opportunity. Failure equals growth, and just the very word failure. I mean, let's just turn that right around and just say, you know, a mistake or something, a learning,
or a challenge.
A challenge. Okay, and you say, okay, well, there's a beautiful story, I'm just racking my brains to remember who it was who I heard this story happened for. I know it's one of the most successful ladies on the planet. I just remember me and names sometimes. You'd have to look it up, but it's a lingerie brand, and the lady who is at the top of this lingerie brand, who built this lingerie brand, her father used to sit them down at the dinner table, and say, "What did you fail at today?"
Okay.
And they wouldn't be, I think it's her and her brother, if I'm remembering correctly, would be kind of making sure that they had something that they could bring to the table to tell their dad about what they'd failed at and what they learned about that failure.
Yeah, how they got over it.
How they got over
the learning
it.
Of it, the learning of the failure.
What a gift.
Yeah.
I mean, even if you could just implement that once a week in your own life, whether it's with your family, whether it's your partner, whether it's, you know, on your own or with a friend or whatever, you say, okay, what did I fail at this week, and how did I overcome it? What have I learned from it? How that would turn most people's lives around would be insane, because they'd see the gift in every failure, mistake, you know, downtrodden moment, and that feeling, and they would learn to overcome it and learn that actually it's probably been for us, losing that 40 grand was the best 40 grand we've ever spent. You know, what can I say? Yeah.
No, I agree. I remember days when I remember spending about as much as £10,000 on mentoring one time, right? And everybody was kind of like, I'm still at the day job these days, and people were somewhat like willing me to fail.
Whoa.
It's like, because the thing is that, hang on, you just spent £10,000 on that mentorship. What you think that's going to produce you results? Guess what this idiot's doing? Yeah, he's saying, you want to give that money to me, Jay. You know, you're not going to make anything. You're going to be sitting in the exact same situation where you are, you know, for pretty much the majority of your life. And I'm like, all right, cool. All right, cool. And, you know, I looked at that, and just like what you just said, even though you know, I've tried loads of things in the past, you know, from trading stock markets to all these different network marketing companies and multi-level market companies and all the mentorship and all the rest of it. And not every single thing has worked.
Sure.
However, it's the best money I've ever spent.
Yeah.
Because you know you've learned something as a result of you spending that money.
Yeah.
So that then meant that although I tried so many different things, and a lot of the people at work was like, "Oh yeah, this is another one of your harebrained schemes," you know, now you're spending as much as 10 grand. It's like, well, you know, by the end of it, I'm like, right, you know, see ya. I'm done now. You know, I've handed in my notice. I'm leaving my day job on the 11th of January 2013. I'm done. I'm out of here.
Yeah.
Oh, Jay, you are so lucky. It's like, what do you mean luck? You know, what do you mean luck? So that really taught me a lesson. It taught me a lesson in terms of how different I was to lots of other people around me, and what I'm prepared to do, how much I am prepared to fail, if that's what we call it, or have the challenges, but then keep on getting up and up and up and up and keep going and going and going and going and going. And I think that's a really, really good message for any budding or startup entrepreneur, that that's a part of the game, right?
Absolutely.
You've got to accept that that is it. This is entrepreneurship. You know, we got to solve problems, but as a part of solving those problems, we're going to have challenges along the way.
Yeah, we're going to fall flat on our face.
Yeah.
We're going to fall down more times that than you're going to succeed in, you know, most people's eyes. But it's interesting because what you're saying there about what those people were saying to you, it's all about the perception, isn't it? And it's their own limitations.
Yeah, that's it.
You know, I don't know if we've spoken about this before. I think we possibly have, that it's literally whatever somebody else says to you, whether it's, you know, going to work or not work, or is or isn't possible, is literally from their own perspective in terms of their own limitations or opportunities that they can see in front of them for themselves. So if they can't see it for themselves, then they're going to project that onto you.
Yeah.
And that's where that kind of, you're never going to, you know, what are you doing? I mean, most of my friends thought I was bonkers starting off in property when I did. Absolutely bonkers.
You're going to fail, Hazel. You're going to fail. You're going to fall flat on your face, you are.
I don't think they said it as blatantly as that. But it was certainly like, you are a bit mad, aren't you?
Yeah.
It is a bit of a risk, isn't it? It's quite a big risk, isn't it? Those were the sort of comments I was getting, and the disapproving look, the slightly like looks that you get when you're doing something out of the ordinary.
So why do you think then that society is so geared up to, you know, prevent you, or you know, that failure is such a bad thing? Because if you never look at it as a child, you know, when you are learning how to walk, how many times will that child fall over before they've now mastered it? and that is the key. That is the key to mastering being able to walk. You know, it's the key to mastering anything. When you first start off driving, you might stall the car quite a few times. So, you know, you could deem that as failure. Hang on, I got in the car today, I had my driving lesson today, and I've stalled the car 4 times. Oh man, I'm such a failure. Oh man.
Yeah.
You know, so even though that is always the key to success in every aspect, you've got to fail a number of times before you then become really good at it. You know, we're not taught this type of stuff. I mean, we're talking about it now, just coming up in conversation. But why do you think that this is not something that is widely spread and widely encouraged? You know, keep on failing until you get it. You know, like. Any sort of opinions on that?
Well, again, I really do think that it is the schooling system that drums it out of us. Yeah. It's like you have to achieve a certain thing, and you have to strive to be the best you can be, and and to tick those boxes and to get those marks and what have you. And I think that it's literally so geared up to that. In fact, there's another interesting sort of report that I was reading about. You take a bunch of 5-year-olds, okay, and there was a study done on a bunch of 5-year-olds as to what traits they had in terms of being a genius. How many of them had the potential to be a genius, right? And again, I know they say that 76% of statistics are made up on the spot. Is one of those moments. Okay, again, you'd have to find this report for yourself, but it's really fascinating because it's definitely out there. Mm-hmm. That something like 90 to 95% of those 5-year-olds had genius potential. They could be classified as genius in the sense of what they were demonstrating at the age of 5. By the age of 10, it had gone down to something like 50%. By the age of 16, we're talking 2 to 3%.
Yeah.
What does that tell you? There is no other, no other, I don't know, what's the word? Explanation. Other than society's prevention. It drums it out of you. Whether it's education and society and parental expectations or limitations that are put upon us to be a certain way, to conform to a certain way of thinking. I don't know. I just think that we all have great potential in us. It's just that some of us can find the way to tap into that perhaps a little bit easier or more than others, due to the circumstances that they had as they were growing up, or certain circumstances that have happened to them that have forced them to find that in themselves.
Yeah.
Because we all have that potential.
Of course, I agree. I 100% agree. So you just made a really interesting point there in terms of like, it's almost like as if it's kind of drummed out of you, yeah? The older as you get, you know, it kind of drums, you know, it's more drummed out of you. And I get that, because hang on a minute, don't express yourself, you know, just sit in this room, you know, we're going to teach you from a, you know, you're 8 years old. Yeah. You know, you're a you know, creative, fun, joyful, you know, little human being, but we're not going to teach you in a way that is going to be, you know, conducive to probably the best way that you're going to learn and pick things up. Instead of that, sit down, be quiet, and let me, you know, write things on a board. So, you know, you can see it. It's kind of, even from them, shh, 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 shh. You know, like, you know, you're talking, like, shh, no, sit down.
Do as you're told.
Do as you're told. You know, like, how many times are you told, like, no, or you're doing something wrong, you know, in a day? And that is also, you know, drummed in from parents as well, because of they've been a part of the same cycle, that same system almost. Yeah. So if it's being drummed out of us in order to continue to just sort of keep on churning out similar people.
Yes.
Is this then done by design, do you think?
Well, there's a whole topic of conversation for sure. If you want, if I'm just going to give you my opinion, and, you know, based on instinct as well as research that I have done over the course of time, I would say that yes. I would say that society, particularly, we've grown up in the UK, and I'm sure that in most of the Western world we're having similar experience of growing up in the way that society moves. And yet in other parts of the world it's very different. So, you know, in the eastern parts of the Europe world it's going to be different. In Africa it's going to be different. In South America, you know, it's going to be different in every part of the world. But there's this kind of this general consensus that in the civilized world this is how we do things. But I've always had a sense, I don't know why, but there's always been a sense in me that there's this sort of, for those of you who are just listening to this, sort of bit of puppeteering going on perhaps, and things, you know, I used to ask, I mean, I'm a bit weird, I used to ask my dad questions like, who decides how much money's in the world, Dad? You know, when I was probably 6 or 7. I mean, what questions are they to go around? But perhaps that's me tapping into the inner part of me that's, you know, maybe more intuitive than, you know, inquisitive, and rather than being told, well, the Bank of England does this and that and the other and blah, blah, blah. So I've always been curious, and I've always had this questioning kind of mind, and I cannot help but conclude from my own feelings, and now watching my own son go through the schooling system and then coming out of the schooling system. We home educated him, as you know, for 3 years before now going back into college system and what have you. And it's been really fascinating watching that journey, both from my own perspective and now my son's perspective. And it's and then watching society and watching how the influences that we have, both from schooling, from parents, from TV, from internet, from, you know, the gadgets, etc., etc. I cannot help but feel and sense and also have come to realise that there is this very, very slow but very dedicated movement towards a certain way of being.
A certain agenda,
And
would
a
you
certain
say?
agenda, certain, yeah.
Yeah. So there's like an agenda for mankind, if you like, right?
Well,
An agenda for mankind, right? And slowly, let's introduce and let's reshape, mankind in.
Hi, I hope you're enjoying the podcast. Don't worry, we've got lots more content left to come. This is just a quick word from me. Now, you will hear us speak a lot about things like mentorship, as well as that, surrounding yourself with the right people. Now, one of the other things, if you really want to achieve the financial success, what makes it helpful is to have things like accountability. This can be the difference between you making it and you really not really quite getting there. Now, if you're at the start of your journey, you want to maybe leave your 9-to-5 day job, or you're just in the process of starting up a business, I would like you to come and check out our website, www.seriousaboutsuccess.com. Over the years, we have coached thousands of people all around the world. We speak on BBC Radio as their go-to guy for anything related to mentorship. It's very important for you to have that helping hand along the way. So come and check out our website, sign up for our free training, and we'll show you exactly what it takes for you to succeed. Now back to the podcast.
Slowly but surely, things changing, to meet a certain agenda. And no matter what, where you are, like in the majority, certainly like the Western world, the same agenda takes place in the same countries, and we're all kind of going on a certain journey, but we don't see it. It's almost like, look, not to get too deep right about now, right? But I'll give you an example. We spoke about this a little bit last time. The difficulties within society nowadays in terms of the cost of living going up continuously, salaries not following suit, almost like they could even be considered. I've been looking at this quite a lot, and the middle class, say for example, the people that once upon a time might buy a home. You buy your home by the age of, I don't know, 50 or 60 or something like that, and then you retire, and then you've got the rest, that sort of life.
yeah.
Like that's not happening no more. But if you look at that over here in the UK, but the same things going on in the US.
Yeah.
The same things going on, in various different parts of the world. I was talking to somebody in Germany a couple of days ago, same sort of thing. So, the same thing is happening everywhere, and, I've looked at, and I kind of echo some people that say it's like the Hunger Games society. There's certain people out there that will say, it's like the Hunger Games society where you've got the super rich and then you've got, just everybody else. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So with what we're talking about in terms of agendas, I know we've kind of gone a bit, we've jumped a little bit from the school and going to school and getting an F in school to the agenda of mankind.
But I suppose it's all related as a thing, because there has to be a process by which we are brought into that way of thinking.
Yes, there you go. Yeah. So you see that then, yeah? You can see the whole maybe a purpose agenda that is almost being rolled out to mankind bit by bit, and we just accept it. The vast majority of the population just accept it.
Yeah.
And that then means that I suppose there's no real opposition to the agenda because we all just somewhat accept it.
Well, I suppose that all goes back to the thing of when you go through school, it's almost like your thinking brain for yourself gets almost switched off.
Yeah.
And so therefore critical thinking and the ability to actually question and think for yourself and have that trust in your own intuition, your own feeling, your own sense in the matter is discouraged, or it's certainly not encouraged. And I would say that and I'm going to just put it out there, that these non-governmental organisations, these NGOs that appear to be, running the show, they're unelected, they're not government agencies that we have, voted for in a supposedly democratic way, and they are seeming to be dictating the way that human society is going to go. I mean, I was talking to my parents literally yesterday, and they watched this quite a disturbing drama documentary, and it was called Accelerate or Die. On this particular channel, and it's like all about how we are expected as a human species to be just accepting of this technology and accepting of the way that things are going to be, and the speed at which it's accelerating, and the fact that if they had their way, that we would all be we would be part of the cloud. We'd be part of the AI technology would be in us, or certainly around us. We've got all these gadgetry, etc., and we're just supposed to accept that because that's human evolution, apparently.
Yeah.
Yet we have no idea what impact that's going to actually have, and the very fact that, I mean, I don't know about you. You have a young daughter. I have a young son, and I see this technology, the constant exposure to this technology, having such an effect on their development and their brains and their attention spans and their ability to critically think, and the ability just to switch the heck off and do something different, go out and actually play with their mates, in the street, or like in a park, or play a game and go and do something outdoors, kind of thing. It's absolutely having a radical effect. And so yes, it does. I can't help but feel that is the way it seems to be going, and who are they answerable to?
Well, yeah. I mean, some people are always sitting here listening. Well, who are you talking about? Well, we're not talking about politicians as such, nope. Right? We're not necessarily even talking about kings and queens. We're talking about, beyond that, people that's really setting the agenda.
Well, the Economic Forum, the UN, the IMF, the Global Bank, etc. You're talking about,
Yeah. So setting agenda. So, okay. So with that agenda, then, why is that agenda why do you think is that agenda set for more harm than good? Say, for example, we was all convinced that we should be taking, I'm not going to mention it out here, but, there was a certain time recently where the whole planet was on lockdown, and you have to have this, you have to have the solution of what we are creating for it, even though, we've only created this in such a short period of time, but you have to have it because, you have to. And then subsequently after that, I mean, I've been seeing loads of ads around saying, oh, have you been impacted negatively, by taking certain things? We can fix it, come to us, and we're, a team of doctors where we can, fix your DNA and, get certain bad things out your system. See, a lot of this stuff doesn't feel like it's very positive. Like a lot of the, the continuous, with school, starting from school, being that clone within that school, and what that now sort of generates in terms of, the person that you've said from genius to, 2% genius, say, for example, all of the technology where, now, I mean, you're seeing kids, everyone is sitting here, and you can't just sit here and think, or you've got to get out your phone. Yeah. You've got to get out your phone and start looking at something, you've got to do. I mean, like I was on a balcony a couple of days ago, right, just on my friend's balcony, and it was a beautiful sunset, and we was talking, and he went downstairs. He had to go and get a drink or something like that. And initially, all right, where's my phone? You know what I mean? And I'm like, what do I need this freaking phone for? Like, look, this is a beautiful sunset. Like, you know what? And I sat there, and I think we spoke about this last time, talking about looking at trees. Yeah. This time round, I was looking at the clouds, I was sitting there, oh, these clouds are amazing. But, you know, it's like, you know, that's me and obviously how I think, you know, and I've been reluctant to get my daughter a smartphone because I'm so scared that, you know, that she's then going to just now, you know, have her head plugged into this phone all of the time, which drives, you know, even more issues with social media and all this different types of stuff. So,
and the social pressure from her friends.
Right,
you will have those things.
That's correct.
And if you're the only one not doing that, I mean,
Yeah.
that's what I faced with my son when he went when he started at secondary school. You know, if you're not the one with some sort of, you know, smartphone, then you literally are the
alien of the group.
The alien of the group, and you will be, you know, extricated. It will just be, you know.
I get you. So it's just, you know, I think that as beings we can be smart enough and wise enough to recognise from a widespread what is fantastic for our society and our growth as human beings, and you know what we could really grow into as humans, and you know, as spiritual beings, say for example, and connect with different types of energies, whatever that may well look like. I think that there is scope for that. However, on a whole, society is not governed that way, and it's a shame. It's a shame. It's a huge shame. Because wars, absolute madness, like absolute crazy. Like, and I don't know if we mentioned this before, it's crazy to the point of where you've got the commandments that say, you know, thou shalt not kill. So over here in, you know, in the Western society, you know, you've got to, you know, abide by certain rules. Unless, and this is in the eyes of God, this is in the eyes of, you know, Christian faith, being from the Western country, say for example. So in the eyes of God, thou shalt not kill. Unless we send you out to war, you go to another country that we disagree with whatever, or we've got an agenda, and in that situation, you're then celebrated as a war hero. And, you know, you get your little plaque and all that sort of stuff.
Doesn't feel right.
It's crazy. It doesn't make sense.
Right. It doesn't make sense or feel right. And let's face it, you know, like I think was an experience in World War II on Christmas Day, where, you know, you've got the warring factions at each other, killing each other, crazy. And then on Christmas Day, they actually had a truce and were playing football. In the middle of, you know, no man's land, because, you know, they just were a bunch of lads who just wanted to have a bit of a glimmer of normality back in amidst the absolute, what must have been insanity, absolute horrendous experience in their lives. For what? For who? For what agenda? Etc. I mean, it just doesn't make, like you said, doesn't make sense. And I think that, you know, I actually thought to myself, well, what if everyone in the world just switched off their phone, switched off their blinking TVs, you know, just sat with themselves for a minute and just looked outside. Everything's okay with the world. Yep. The weather's still doing its thing. The birds and the bees are still doing their thing. The nature's still doing its thing. So what is actually so bad? It's only blinking human beings that can, you know, can create such horrendous stuff. And it's typically just a very, very, very few people who do this. And so if you know, you go on you hear about these stories of people going on tours around the world and just like adventures around the world and just finding the most incredible spirit and humanitarian acts of kindness and goodness, and like people who have got literally nothing will give you their last penny to help you get on your way if you've broken down, or, you know, or take you into their home if you've, you know, if something's happened and you need a place to stay for the night. And I mean, 99.9% of this planet is phenomenal, and we just don't see it because we're distracted. That's what it is. We're being distracted, Jay.
That's right.
That's the way I see it.
Okay, distracted in so many different ways. Everything is like almost they're designed to affect your internal, external programming. You know, from food even, you know, like from, you know, like, you know, the chemicals that are in food. I mean, how do you get a decent meal? Like, even if we're going to get organic stuff, like really, unless you grow it yourself, unless you ultimately do that, how do we even, how do we get a decent meal? This is what I mean. Like,
I was literally talking to a farmer friend yesterday.
Really?
Literally, he farms agricultural land and he he grows certain types of crops, and he's actually given up growing certain types of crops because it's just not profitable anymore. And he doesn't believe in all the pesticides that he has to put on. He said he stopped eating rapeseed oil because of the stuff that they put on it before it even germinates and all this. It's like, like you say, and it's in all our foods. It's
how do you get a decent meal? This is what I mean. Like
No.
the insanity. Just to let's just call it what it is here. Let's get there, right?
Yeah.
The insanity of just the world we're living, and I'll talk it insanity. And anyone that questions it, just look at a war. Like, but hang on a minute. Yeah, but they did this. Well, did they? Did they? Said who?
Yeah.
Says who? Oh, well, the politicians and this and that and this and that. Well, are the politicians living the same life as you, as everybody else? Because I don't know if they are. Do you get what I mean? But they said this and they said that. And it's like, well, if you just look at it, what feels right? Does bombing up, whoever, does that feel right? If children are being impacted by this, if innocent people are being impacted by a war, then whoever is constructing that war, whoever's instructing that war to go ahead, no doubt it's more higher up than the presidents and the prime ministers and the people that we think are calling the shots. Then we've got to look at it as the insanity, because how could you kill somebody just for your gain, like whether or not that is oil or whatever? I mean, look, to go back to, the biggest thing for me that was the biggest eye opener was, what happened? Was it 2001? In America with the
Twin Towers.
Yeah, the Twin Towers. Yeah, that was the biggest eye opener for me. And after that, I questioned everything because that was it for me. Like, up until that point, I was very inquisitive and all the rest of it. But at that point, there were so many different factors of what went on there that it's like, well, hang on a minute.
What's the truth?
Well, it's like, yeah, but the thing is like, you're not even, it's like you don't even give a shit anymore. It's like, you're not even hiding anymore. You're putting something in plain sight. There is no plane. Pentagon, there is no plane. Like, and you're going to just say something and then everyone's going to just believe it, even though your eyes might see something different. And it was that moment, that's when I then thought, geez.
Okay.
And then I thought to myself, if that's what a government are going to do, to get their own way, because then after that, obviously that sparked the war in Afghanistan, and then after that, remember Osama bin Laden and all the rest of it. Then after that, then next minute it was Al Qaeda in Afghanistan, and we're against Al Qaeda. But then all of a sudden, now we're going to go to Iraq because of weapons of mass destruction, which is obviously not far from Afghanistan, and we're going to blow up Iraq as well. And then they used to be talking about Al Qaeda in Afghanistan, and then next minute they're talking about Al Qaeda in Iraq, and it's like, well, hang on a minute. I thought Afghanistan was in. I thought that was the Afghanistan thing, but now we're talking about Iraq and all the rest of it, and then you're talking about weapons of mass destruction, but you never found no weapons of mass destruction, so you killed all them people. And then you're now trying to bring in the Iraqi thing, the Afghanistan Al Qaeda thing, to sort of maybe try and justify what it is. It's all right though, even though we didn't find weapons of mass destruction, and we blew up the whole place. Well, it was all right because there was Al Qaeda then, even though Al Qaeda was supposed to be in Afghanistan. it just didn't make sense.
Well, the word is insanity, isn't it?
It's insanity. It is absolute crazy when you look at it, and part of this is the reason as to why I am the entrepreneur, because I want to try and be as free as I can possibly be within what I see as the asylum. So that means that if I want to jump in the car and go somewhere at 2:00 on a Monday, then I can, because at least I'm trying to be as free as I possibly can be within the asylum of what I see, and what do you think?
Well, I mean, Jay, I made a very conscious decision at the age of 18 when I left home to stop watching the news.
Yeah.
It had never been my choice to watch the news. My dad was an avid watcher of the news, and we'd sit down at 6 o'clock every evening and have dinner and watch the news, and that was the way that it was, and that's how I grew up. However, I never enjoyed watching it, and I don't, I'm an only child, so I didn't have any sort of brothers and sisters to kind of go off and play or what have you. But I just, used to go and do my own thing. I'd go and go up the garden, or I'd draw, or what have you. But but it was that was a family time that we spent, and we watched the news. Sometimes we watched the Flintstones beforehand as well, so that was quite fun. But the conscious decision to stop watching the news when I was 18 has meant that I've had quite a few years now of not watching the news. And so my version of the world, I think, looks very different to a lot of people's versions of the world, because it hasn't been tainted or coloured by. Don't get me wrong, I've kept kind of abreast of the news. I've heard about things that have happened, but it hasn't been, I haven't fed it to myself in terms of reading newspapers and watching news. And some people would say that's irresponsible, or that it's how can you function in society without knowing what's going on? Well, you can perfectly well function in society without having that influence in you, because I just always felt really that it dulled me down. It just made me feel bad. And you'd get maybe one decent news or like good news article at the end of it, just to make you feel a little bit better. Same also with soap operas. I used to be a massive fan of soap operas. I would watch them. I'd watch probably 4 or 5 of them, in quick succession.
See, I could never see you watching these shows. Being an avid fan,
I used to. I used to. Yeah. And again, it was probably I was mid-20s when I decided that enough was enough of that, and that's when I was getting into all the personal development and wanting to change my life in a way that I was able to steer my own boat. I think that's the way I'd describe it.
Hi, I hope you're enjoying the podcast. Don't worry, we've got lots more content left to come. This is just a quick word from me. Now, you will hear us speak a lot about things like mentorship, as well as that, surrounding yourself with the right people. Now, one of the other things, if you really want to achieve the financial success, what makes it helpful is to have things like accountability. This can be the difference between you making it and you really not really quite getting there. Now, if you're at the start of your journey, you want to maybe leave your 9-to-5 day job, or you're just in the process of starting up a business, I would like you to come and check out our website, www.seriousaboutssuccess.com. Over the years, we have coached thousands of people all around the world. We speak on BBC Radio as their go-to guy for anything related to mentorship. It's very important for you to have that helping hand along the way. So come and check out our website, sign up for our free training, and we'll show you exactly what it takes for you to succeed. Now back to the podcast.
So I saw that as an opportunity really to steer my own boat. The ability to sort of switch everything else off and just concentrate on what was important to me. And let's face it, we don't all have infinite time each day. We have a set 24 hours on this, apparent clock system that we have. And so you have to choose very carefully how you're going to spend it. Very carefully. And literally when I hear those words now, how you spend your time, you literally spend your life, and you choose what your life is influenced by. And so if you think about how you spend your money, you're careful about how you spend your money, but are you careful about how you spend your time? And so that became more and more and more and more apparent to me, that I couldn't do everything in a day. So therefore I had to cut out the soap operas. I had to cut out, other distractions. I had to concentrate therefore on things which were going to get me towards financial freedom, for example, and set me on the path of looking, researching properties in the evening, making phone calls during the day to get property viewings and what have you in the diary, and start to make that my life. But it was a very conscious choice. I don't think I quite realised that I was doing that at the time because I was still very young. But if you're going to if you want a different world, you have to operate in a different way. And I've always loved the quote, the Gandhi's quote, "Be the change." Because if I'm not living and breathing that, how on earth can I expect anybody else that I love and care about, or you know, that I work with, to do the same, or to if I could be a demonstration of that, I think that's how we start to change things. Because we've got to talk about how what's the turnaround here. Jay, what, in your opinion, how do we turn this around in terms of, humanity's got to a pretty freaking craziest point in its whole existence so far. How do you see us turning this around? Lands that on you right there.
That's a question. How do we turn it around?
Come on, Jay, you've got the answers right.
Well, look, I tell you what. Right, first of all, there's certain things I believe that would need to be exposed first and foremost. You've been talking about the news, and the way that the news is just kind of pumped full of negativity. Oh, by the way, this baby goat, gave birth to some other goat, for example, and that's the good news. Is that an agenda? Is that a part of the whole, agenda, and why? Why keeping, why do we have to keep people in a state of fear? Why does the schooling system have to be the way it is? In terms of like what we've been talking about. I think that we've got to, expose certain things for it not being conducive towards society. Why is so much crap in food? You just want to have a decent meal, and like I say, how do I get a decent meal unless I go and I literally grow the food myself? How do I get a decent meal? I have no idea. Like I say, I'll try and go organic, but I'm still just buying that. I don't know where that has come from. So to have a decent meal, I think that as a society we've got to really just look at the reality of what's really going on and how it's impacting us and who we really could be if it wasn't for all of this external programming, all of these distractions, and who we really could be. And once we're aware of that, then we can maybe start, all right, well, let's start with schooling system. Let's start reforming that, because I think you mentioned in the last podcast or one of the other podcasts that that's been going for such a long time. The schooling system has never been revamped ever. So it's like, well, what's that about? We're now in this in the modern era. So why is that not being revamped? So I think starting there. And it will take some generations to really now start. So not our generation, unfortunately. We'll be out of here, because you've got too many people within our society that will be saying that we're crazy. No, you're nuts, mate. You're nuts. I've got to watch a bit of news. And no, they're serving our country. They're and like I say, but people, they do what they think is the right thing to do.
Of course.
So I'm not blaming anybody. People just do what they. We all live in this society, but. To really be able to, sort of start phasing it out again, people's mindsets and ideologies need to change, and that will only happen over centuries, generations, should I say. That will happen through different generations. And that's it. That's the way it's going to happen, because at the moment there is still too many people that are going to almost fight against what we are saying. They're going to fight, hang on, you're mad. You should have had, when the whole world was on lockdown, you should have had that, you're doing something wrong, what do you mean, the Twin Towers, what do you mean, you're crazy, the Princess Diana, of course she was, of course it was just as per what they said it's going to be. Of course the official story is the official story. So because there's going to be so many of those minds, it's difficult to, again, these people are going to have to, because they're deep rooted within that mindset.
Right,
so then to be able to go and say to these people, guess what? It's all a lie. It's all a lie. It's all a scam. Guess what? There's an agenda and it's a scam. We're crazy. Hang on a minute. You're crazy. So you can't change people's minds when they're that deep rooted and they don't want to change their minds. So that's why it needs to start from the very beginning, the educational system. There you have it.
Yeah. No, I think
that answer your question.
A very valid point. Yeah, very valid point. I think it even starts at the individual level.
Yeah.
That if you can live your life the best way that you can, and you can demonstrate that doing things a certain way and being a certain way is possible, then that can, we have no idea how much impact and how much change. We have these incredible tools at our disposal these days in the form of technology, in the form of podcast interviews like this on YouTube, etc. We have a platform like we've never had before, where we can, people are out there reaching out, and they are out there being themselves and demonstrating who they are, how they operate, what different ways of doing things there are. And at that individual level, it can, I believe, create that ripple effect. And that's what I'm all about, is in whatever small way I can do this, it's the ripple effect. It's living and breathing how I feel is best for me, and just living that way and helping people however I can help them in the way that I help, which is obviously through my coaching. And if that sparks off a bit of inspiration in somebody else, or somebody thinks, oh, well, I didn't even realise I had an option to not do that, or to see things a different way, or to perhaps go and research what, these organisations are all about and where the money comes from, and, how they actually quite cross-populate quite a lot, and what's really going on there,
Yeah.
And so it's even just having conversations like this, I think, which start the seed change.
Of course, I agree.
So
when if you're ready, if you're inquisitive enough, and if you're listening, because you're at that point where you're ready for your mind to be exposed to certain things and to grow.
Yeah, or might already be.
Yeah. Well, this is it. I think that's who's going to listen.
Yeah.
To how many of those people.
Yeah.
To say, for example, some of my family members, or my daughter's got an auntie that, geez, you can show it clear as day. It's like, well, no, because I saw it on the news.
Yeah.
So because I saw it on the news,
Yes.
and that's it.
Do you know what it is? Do you know what it is for me? Is why believe anything that's not your own direct experience? You can only ever deal with what is put right in front of you.
That's right.
In any one particular circumstance. Throughout your day, you have certain influences and experiences coming in your life. And for the vast majority of people, thank goodness, for the vast majority of people on this planet, we experience relative peace and harmony. Okay? Absolutely, there are places, as we know, which are war-torn, where people are experiencing horrendous, heinous situations. And of course, that's a whole other level for them to have to deal with. But for the vast majority of people on this planet, it's actually, you just get on with life, and you do the best you can do. Most people are just going out there working, etc. And if you take away all the other distractions, life is very harmonious and very calm and very peaceful if you choose to see that. Like you're saying about noticing the sunset, like noticing, like going for a walk in the
seeing the trees
for the first time, and and actually noticing how amazing this planet actually is. And I know that might all sound a little bit kind of airy-fairy, but it's reality. Let's face it, it is reality. My world, I choose my world and what I have in my world very carefully. And, I'm very, very, very fortunate on a day-by-day basis to experience relative peace and harmony and happiness and joy and stuff which fills me up. And either it's the distractions that come in from the outside. Don't get me wrong, I do look at my phone here and there, but I can't stand social media, so I'm kind of like 5 minutes on Facebook here and there, and that's it, once a day sort of thing. But actually, it's also the internal stuff. So you've got to watch your own internal world going on. So it's, perhaps it's a conversation for a whole other time about, watching not only the external, but the internal world and how much is going on there. Because when you take those, when you kind of really watch what's going on, then life is actually pretty freaking awesome if you choose to tune into it and see it for what it really is.
Well, this is it. So this was, I don't know if we can have enough time on today's podcast, but this is what kind of leads into, all right, so what is the true nature of reality?
Wow.
Because if society and the matrix as such, the everyday, right, got to get up, make money, we got to do this stuff, even money, down to the banking system in terms of, look, we're going to rent you, we're going to put some digits in on a computer, and then we're going to charge you interest on that. None of it exists. It's not real. Do you know what I mean? None of it's real, but it's all a part of the asylum, yeah? So, outside of the asylum, outside of that, what's real, like what really is the true nature of us as beings then? Because if we're looking at the beauty of the planet now, or what we're saying, you look at the sunset here, I'm looking at the trees still, right? We're looking at these things, and like exactly what you're saying in terms of how we choose to program our minds, to recognize and see the good, see the awesome, the awesome planet, just to look at, to go for a walk and watch the sea, anything is wondrous. It's a beautiful thing. Yeah. So what is that true nature then? So outside of this society, the true nature of reality, what does that really look like?
Well, I don't know about you, Jay, but I think we're going to have to explore that one. We're going to have to,
next time. Next time. I know we've been going for a little while now. Let me double check. Yes, we've been going for a while now. So, we'll park that. Park
that question and we'll bring that to the equation.
That's right.
When we next speak, how's that?
I think that would be a really good idea, because I think that's where all of this is leading to. In terms of, the system, the educational system, entrepreneurship and all the rest of it. But really and truly, the crux of it is, putting all of that aside and just having this beautiful planet. What does it really mean to really connect with, the dimension, the simulation, or whatever we want to put it down? But we'll talk about this very soon.
Sounds good. Sounds like
I've got a lot of questions and a lot of things to say.
Brilliant.
About that sort of thing. So we'll do that.
Excellent.
Right. I think we pretty much covered quite a lot today.
I think we have. I think, Jay, that is a wrap. But it's been an absolute pleasure, as always.
We started off with talking about failure, and then we're talking about agendas and the nature of reality.
We cover a lot of ground.
Yes, we certainly do. Hence the reason why we put it down on the podcast,
exactly.
Which is great. So, excellent, Hazel. We'll do it again very, very, very soon.
Brilliant.
Yeah?
Thanks.
Any
Jay.
last points you want to mention at all? Is that you?
I think that's a wrap. Yeah.
Okay. Well, look, don't forget to always check out Hazel on the Wealth Whisperer. You've got your podcast well and truly going now. So
you've got
the Wealth Whisperer.
That's the one.
So you can look you up on Spotify, Apple Podcasts.
Yep.
All over the place.
YouTube. Yep.
Obviously, YouTube as well. Obviously, me, Serious About Success. You can find that all over everywhere that you find your podcasts and all the rest of it. So look, we'll do this very, 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 very soon. Until the next time, everyone, thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll touch base again very soon.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you very much. Cheers.